indicator when I'm importing something. I want to have a clear indicator where it's coming from, right? So basically, if we are in controller code, I want to make sure that we never import anything that has UI in it, right? So that's why I also named these UI. So we can easily see in our code that basically specific controllers don't end up calling UI code, which then would cause problems, right? So let's look at our game though. So this is going to be the last part that we're going to have to separate out. The thing is, this game implements the base class game, but the base class game, if you think about it, where it's being used, is going only used in the game widget, and obviously in our game where we're extending it. But basically, the game widget itself, we already declared this is a UI thing. So basically, what we want to do, we want to say this game actually is going to be UI thing, which then means that our TUFO game by itself also is UI thing, which means that if we want to basically use the update code, right? Basically all the code that's calling controllers, that needs to become a separate class as well. So this update method here, everywhere where we call controllers, right, we basically need to make sure that that's actually in a separate class, so that part we can use on the server as well. But then where we basically are calling a player update sprites, that will be in the basically in the UI class, right? So actually what we're going to do for now, we're going to do create a method here, update sprites, and it's going to take the same parameters as update, and the idea is that update sprites will never be called on the server. Okay, so now obviously what will have to happen in our game base class, we have to have this as a required method, and now wherever we are calling update, so that should be the game widget. Wherever we are calling update, we need to also call game.update sprites, right? So now so the idea is that in our UI we will call update and also update the sprites. In our server we'll only call update, right? So and basically what we'll do, we'll separate out a game controller from here. We're going to create a new class and we're going to call it game controller. Class game controller. Okay, and now the game controller will basically take this update method. It goes over here now, and this update method, all it will do is it will end up calling right. We put it for here now, game controller update. Once we have the controller ready, this game will actually take the game controller and will forward those calls, right? Now, as we already see, there are some things that we're missing here, right? We need to obviously import those and add fields. So we got that, and the game props. All right. Bullets controller, camera. So camera follow, right? That is clearly UI thing. So maybe in that case, update sprites. I'm going to say update UI, because that's better. I mean, we're not rendering the UI yet. We're just updating everything that's only UI specific, right? But not only sprites. In this case, we're also updating the camera. Okay, so the resize clearly UI thing. So we're starting to look good here. So the player controller obviously needs to be, and we can start to see that this is no longer used in the main game. So we got the controller here. All right, and then basically what we need to do, so the game keyboard press keys. So that's not, yeah, so the game keyboard, if you look at that, we don't want to reference that directly. We need to basically import those somehow. right? And basically, so we need to basically still, in the update method here, in our game that knows how to do UI, it needs to basically get the press keys. And then it needs to call the controller with those press keys. And so if you look at the types here, so we got a set of game key. And then, so that's the game keys. And we're going to look at maybe how to represent those game keys a little better, especially when we send them over the server. And then we have the gestures, which are aggregated gestures, right? So we put those over here as well. Okay, and so now we have press keys, gestures. The game needs to be, it could be passed in. We'll look into if we pass this in or not. So these are press keys. All right, and so now you can see that we need to just pass those in when we update the controller. So that's fine. Now the bullet force is not here. So the bullet force is needed to calculate how far, how strong to accelerate the bullet, basically, right? So we need that here, and we need to initialize it. So the game props will share with the server, so this can actually be in the constructor. So we can do this. Okay. So, and actually what we'll do, well, actually we won't have it as a parameter. We'll just basically do what we did over here, right? We just set it from the game props. So now, let's see. So now we need the game. So the question is, when we create the game controller, do we have a reference of the game? And I think the answer is yes, right? The server will basically start going, have a game controller for a specific game, and then it will just keep updating the world, right? So there's no reason to pass it in on every update. So therefore, we'll have the game here. And we will initialize that in the constructor. So say this dot game. Okay. See how we're looking here. So this looks good for now. So basically right now all it's doing is it basically tells the other controllers to update. And then here it does some sort of updates to the bullet models, creates a bullet model and adds the bullet to the bullet controller. Fine. So basically now we can remove the things that we're not using anymore in here. Let's see. So this is render. So there seems to be, most of this was actually rendering in the game. And now basically we just need to basically create the game controller now. And so what does the game controller need? It just needs the game. So we're getting the game passed into us here. So basically we'll have a game controller. And we'll just create that here. Game controller with the game. And so this only happens when we're actually running this on the client, right? This only happens if we are... That's weird. So are we not... Yeah, we have a game model. So why is this coming? Okay, let's see. Well, let's look at some of the errors we have here. Okay, so maybe then this will also be happy again. Yeah, I don't understand why it's complaining. we can't reference this expression here, so we have to use the parameters passed in, and that should be fine. So game controller isn't used. We can fix that easily. So we just need to call the game controller and update dt ds and then ts, and then we need to give it also the pressed keys and the gestures. Okay, and now we can see this is forming up nicely, because what will happen on the server, right? The client will send us what keys were pressed, right? And then the server can basically pass those in the controller here and simulate what would happen in the world. So the client will actually not send ever like, okay, where is the player now, or what's the velocity of the player. The server will calculate all that, and then the client will just basically obey whatever the server decides should have happened. The colliders, we don't... Okay, now this is odd. Oh, this is in the game. Okay, yeah. We don't need the colliders here because we never calculate collisions in the game itself. So now we can move this controller to controllers. And now all that's left here is this game that is basically the UI part, right? So we'll move this into UI. And so now we can see that basically in main we are referencing our game widget, right? Which is our game. Our game that's in the UI. And we can see that we are here importing stuff from the UI, right? Here, game widget and the game. Now in the server code, we can never have anything that has UI in it. That's kind of the rule. So we can easily just see that from our imports. Now here in the engine, I don't know where to put these things. They're kind of all over the place right now. But we'll keep them here for now. That's fine. Maybe we come up with a nice name for this. This game though needs to go into the UI because it has UI stuff in it, right? So we need to make sure that in the server we'll never mention this. Okay. So I think we're looking pretty good here. These things are part of the engine that are not UI specific, right? They're just basically calculating things. And the nice thing now is like we can easily just look through those, look at the imports, and if there's no UI in it, or .ui or kind of material from Flutter, anything Flutter, we know we are good, right? Okay. So, and the sprites are basically clearly part of the UI, but we have them separate. But obviously, we should never import any of these either, right? Because they are clearly part of the UI. Okay. And one could argue maybe we should move them in there, but for now we'll leave them here. One thing I forgot to do, we need to tag the beginning of this episode with episode 20 start. And now we'll check in our code. And we'll say game separated game UI from controller code. All right. And we can push that up. Okay. Now we are almost ready. We are almost in a good place to go ahead and actually start writing server code. What we want to be able to make sure is that we can run the game itself, the game controller, right? So this one here, before we were trying to always run the player controller, but now I actually want to run this one as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the game player controller configuration. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to try to see. And we keep the this one around because in case like suddenly the game we can't run it anymore with pure Dart, then we can try. Well, maybe is the player still working or not? And then we can kind of start rolling out where maybe we made a mistake. Controller. Okay, so let's see if we can run that. Okay, so yes, that's another thing I wanted to do. So basically, we did this Dart types thing here, and we keep having to comment all this code out. So what I'm actually going to have to do is I'm going to create a folder Dart types, which has a Dart types class in it, and then we'll have the fakes. And this is kind of hard to explain without doing it, so I'll just go ahead and do it. So we'll have Dart types. And what we'll do is we move this class in here. Okay, but the thing is, instead of having all this code here, this one will move to a different Dart file. We say Dart types, or let's just say replacement types. Placement types. Okay, we'll put them in here. And now basically in here what we'll do is just say export replacement. We want to get our replacement, but except we want to make it as a package. Package. And that's going to be... Okay, so let's start over. If you can't spell, then the IDE cannot help you either. Package, this is UFO. Well, bad UFO. Okay, and then we want the replacement Dart types, and we want the replacement types. Okay. Okay, so now we are basically exporting this twice, and this should say something. Right. So basically, what we can do is now we can either comment this, and now we are working with our replacement types, or we can comment this, and now we have the real types. So it's much quicker now to change this. And what we could basically do in the server is we'll just kind of remove the last line or something and uncomment the first, something like that. We may find some automated way to do that. So now it should actually work. Okay, so now we can see that, yes, it doesn't contain a main, but it works, right? We could put a main file in our game controller now just to play around and see if things are working, but we don't really need to. So now things are fine. Now, if we want to run the game, well, I mean, if you want to get type safety again, right, and these kind of warnings, then we need to turn this on. Actually, what I wanted to look up is I wanted to see if Dart error analysis options parameters. So treat missing as a warning, not a hint. So here's something like that. Treat. Okay. So here's missing required params, but the thing is, like, it says required params, right? So I think we will still need the required tag, basically, or the attribute for this to work. So there seems to be no such thing as saying that even without the without that annotation, require all the parameters to be there. Let's say Dart make all parameters required by default. I want to see if that's possible, because then we might not even need... Okay. So there's a whole argument here why... Okay, so they're not making this change ever, so we'll have to live with this. So we have to keep doing something along those lines. Before we check in, though, so just to be clear, what I wanted to do is I wanted to avoid having to put a required here just to get a warning every time I forget to pass it in. Right now, we basically have to use this foundation package to get that warning. But then if you use a foundation package, since it's defined in Flutter, code won't run as a server, and that's why we have to do this whole workaround. And I was just looking if maybe there's a way to avoid it. So let's just make sure that the game is still running. And then we can check this code in. Oh, yes. Okay, so yesterday I was playing around. I was trying to see what we can use for the server code. And I was playing around with the socket.io library in Dart. and that didn't work with the latest Dart code. So I downgraded Flutter, and then I upgraded it again. And I'll talk about that later. But basically, okay, so that's interesting. So here we have a bug. Let's fix that first. But we'll talk about the server stuff a little more in another episode. So the player controller is not initialized, right? We never created, so we need to fix it, obviously. And I doubt, so the bullets controller we are also never creating. Okay, so let's look at what the player controller. Let's see what the player controller takes as parameters. And obviously we want to stop this because it's just going crazy over here. So player controller takes all these parameters, which means we also need to pass them to the game. Hold on, but we already have that. So we have a player here. So in the game we actually don't. Okay, let's step back here and think about this real quick. So it looks like we're not as done yet as I thought we were. So yes, here we need to only update the player controller. And the player itself does not have a player controller. Okay, so that's correct. So we need to create ourselves. And the thing is, now we're starting to call this as player, and it's starting to get a little bit confusing, right? Because we have the player controller, and then we have the kind of like the player UI. But we'll leave it like this for now until we come up with a better name. But basically, let's just go back to our. Let's just start from the. Let's just close all the windows. That sometimes helps, and we'll open the game controller first. So the game controller wants to update the player controller, so that's why we need to create the game controller, the player controller here, right? And we used to create this so as a player. So the player controller is a new player controller, and it needs to have all these things. Okay, so we need to pass in this collider add thing. And basically this means we have some code that we deleted and that we now need again. So let's see. We might have changed that in another. In the previous. All right, let's see. Because I don't want to have to redo the code if we already have it. So here we have the player. Okay. So I'm trying to get, so here we go, right? So here we have all this code that we removed and actually we needed. So for instance, we need colliders and all these things. So let's just close this thing. Let's put this at least to the right of what we were doing. And let's at least look at the code while we're doing this. So the player controller was basically this code. So we'll basically just copy that out, and as you can see, we basically just accidentally totally got rid of it. We were not trying to do that. Okay, so let's see. All right, so basically we just need the colliders. Where do the colliders come from? Let's see. They should be coming from, oh, here we go. We're creating them here. All right, so this code should have not gotten removed, but it did anyways. I'm missing. All right. So now we got the colliders. We got the player controller created, and then as well we need the bullets controller still to be created. So we just accidentally moved all that code instead of moving it where it should end up. So, but fortunately, thanks to source control, nothing is ever lost. Okay, so we're creating the player controller, we're creating the bullets controller, and now we should actually be in a better place to try to launch this again. But let's look through this a little bit better. So basically, the game controller now. When we call update on it, it updates all its controllers. And now let's look at the game though. So the game itself, when we call update on it, it updates the game controller, which is fine. And when we call update UI, it updates basically the sprites and the UI kind of things. Okay, so that's fine. And now our game should work again. So we'll check that, and once that works, we'll also do another check if our controller code is still working just with plain out. So this is working now again. Okay, cool. We can shoot, we can hit ourselves, and lose health. This all works. Okay, cool. So now, and this is annoying, but I'm going to have to do this. We'll find a way, maybe some script that we can do. Basically, where the dart types here. Now I need to basically do this. Didn't do it. I want to do that many and do that, and then I can test the game controller if that still works now, and it works. So that means, but obviously this one we never want to check in, right? At least not for now. So basically what we did. So what was the last check-in? Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, so basically, like, we'll just amend that because that previous commit wasn't really complete, one could argue. So, I mean, we also moved a bunch of things around, but that's fine. So we'll just add this, amend this commit, and say this was part of that idea. Okay, so now we can close this one down. And now we are basically in a good place to work on some more things to prepare for the server. One thing I want to mention is, and I'm going to open some links. Basically, I started looking into how can we basically run this code on the server. What are we going to do? So there are basically two options, right? Two main options. One is we can write our server in Dart, and then we can just use that code that we cleaned up. And basically, yes, that's one main choice. And the other choice is we can actually compile our Dart code to JavaScript. So anytime there's no Flutter code in there, we can actually use some tools. There is a Dart dev C or dev compiler or Dart 2JS, I think it's called, where we can basically compile JavaScript. We can even get like a module exports and so on. And I actually tried that yesterday. That actually works. I tried that with the player controller, and it works. Actually, I might just show this while we're talking about it. And this might be interesting, even though we'll probably not end up doing this. But if I look at my history and I grab I think it was Dart dev, you can see what I did here. I basically compiled main Dart and I tried that. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to compile the game. So if I go to lib and I wanted to now take the game controllers, the game, right? Game controller, and I want to basically output that, let's say, to temp. Okay, so we need to let's just do this here. Make dir temp, or actually like let's make it a JS for now. Okay, and so we want to put this out to JS. Oh, I created this in the wrong folder. Okay. So let's go to bad UFO and make dir JS. Okay, and then here we can basically say this is our game. JS. Okay, now we're going to see what happens. Okay, all right, for obviously yes. So we need to first of all again fix this, right? Just to try this out even. Now it should work. Okay, so now we got our game.js. Now we can actually look in there. Since we didn't turn any optimizations on, it's actually quite readable. And we also said, as you can see, we want ES6 modules. So now you can find an export there, and you can see that actually we have some exports here. And the naming is basically trying to be unique, right? Including the folders, because if we had the same export twice or the same file twice in different folders, it would get confused. So you can kind of, if we I wonder if we can format this, but it's fine. We can just see it like this. So you can see that all these things get actually exported. So we'd have access to all these classes. However, there's no type annotations or anything like that. So if I go here to game controller, right where that is defined, there is a constructor, but it doesn't basically, we get no type checks on that. What kind of parameters we are passing in. Unfortunately, it doesn't generate comments or anything like TypeScript definitions, which would have been nice because then we could have used that as well. But it doesn't do that. So that's one option. We could basically compile this, and then we can write our server. We could write this in JavaScript or TypeScript and use Node to run it, which is definitely an option to consider because from what I gathered, Dart servers are not half as common even as Node.js servers. So a lot of basically things like Heroku or so on, they're supported. I actually researched and I asked my friend Julian Duke, who works there. They're supported, but they're basically all these build packs that are supporting Dart are depending on something called Setter 14 or something, which is being phased out. Okay, so that's definitely a challenge. But we have that option. The other option is I was looking at, okay, well, what about if I just use Dart and maybe I'll use Socket.io, right? Maybe there's a Socket.io package. And so I looked at that package. And first of all, when I tried to run it with Dart, the newest version, it didn't work at all because it's wrapping some Dart classes by inheriting, and then the Dart classes changed version. So there's an issue that might have actually been fixed now. Well, it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't the other. There's a client pack as well. So let's copy that. There's a client pack here, and I think the issue is there's a bunch of issues in here, and one of them I think is has to do with that problem. Well, I said okay, fine. So I downgraded, and then still things didn't work. Basically, I got some errors where it was trying to change the headers after they were sent, so on. So let's just say it's probably not quite as, and I don't want to complain about anyone here that did this package, but just because not quite as many people are using it, it is not quite as battle tested. Let's just say that. Okay, so, but then I started realizing that maybe we don't need Socket.io. And I thought maybe instead we use something that actually Dart supports in a more supported way, right? Where basically, in this case, Google is behind it because this is gRPC. We're going to talk about that more in detail, but basically, it also allows for bidirectional sockets. So that's what Socket.io does, right? You get a WebSocket, and so you can quickly send messages back and forth between server and client. With gRPC, it basically allows you to do the same thing. So I had a link here. Let me look that up. So there's a gRPC quick start link that I have. And basically the main important thing is that we can, it actually is, well, this is the, let's go to the overview here. gRPC, so I'm going to actually paste that into the, let's just go to the home page. I'm going to post it into the channel here. So if you're interested, you can read up on that. And yeah, if you have any questions, by the way, let me, feel free to use the chat. That's what it's for. I look, sometimes I miss messages, but I glance over there once in a while to make sure that I answer questions. But basically, you can see here that bidirectional streaming is possible, right? So that's the main thing we're interested in, because we want to most likely have the clients connect to the server and be able to send updates like, what did the player do? Press the key, or right, or maybe move the, well, not the mouse, but basically had a touch event on the phone, and we want to basically send it to the server, and the server has to keep updating all the clients all the time about the game state that changed, and that needs to be super quick. The more we go out of sync, the more difficult it gets to kind of hide that basically on the clients, right? So when we look at gRPC and we look at let's look at the docs. I think there must be some. Yeah, those are the. Now I'm basically looking for where they're explaining the gRPC concepts, gRPC wire format. I wonder if that's what I'm looking for. No, that's not what I was looking for. gRPC concept. Let's just say. Okay, so this is a good example here. So basically, gRPC uses a format to basically, it's called an interface definition language or something like that, IDL, that basically defines what kind of messages are we sending. So RPC, by the way, stands for Remote Procedure Call. And that basically means that the clients are invoking methods on the server. So for instance, the client can say, either it can say the player pressed the key. We may use that, or it may say, I'm going to open a stream where I'm going to keep sending you the key presses. So we're going to have to see which one of those we're going to use. And then basically the most simple one is here, right? We're going to say, say hello. I'm going to send you the hello request as an input, and then you are going to send me a hello response. So the server is sending that. And then basically the messages are defined in protobuf format. So there's a let's just say protocol maybe, protobuf, protocol buffers. So this is basically and again, something from Google. It's a format that's defined, and it in a way it is like, you could think of it as it's kind of JSON, but much more efficient, and it is also typed, strongly typed. So you have to tell what you're sending, and then basically it can optimize the message sizes and so on. And then since it's all typed and so on, it can actually generate types for these message types. So basically it can generate Dart types for that. And obviously what it can also do, it can say, well, these are the methods. I'm actually going to generate you some sort of a server that can do that. And actually, I don't want to get too much into this, because I think I'm going to repeat most of this in the episode where we're actually going to do this. But basically, I just wanted to kind of explain this a little bit, because in either case, we want to keep our messages small. And so, for instance, here, right, we want to maybe there's a better example here, but basically, we want to maybe send, when we send key presses, instead of sending, right, the way we have it now is, if you look at the key press types, where are they here? No, they're not here. Where are our key press types? So let's say GameKeys, right? GameKeys. Let's look for the class game key. Okay, so it's an enum right now, right? And an enum, as you may know, is represented by an integer, right? Basically, this is basically 1, this is 2, 3, 4, something like that, or 0 base, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But the thing is, we don't want to send like 4 integers. We don't want to even, so when we have a set of game keys, right? And we're using, we basically have this, when we create this in the keyboard, we are creating a set of this. So that means like we might have, if we have 2 keys, we might have 2 integers that we're sending. Well, basically that means like I think there's no such thing as a set in protobuf. We're going to have to look, but in that case, we'd have an array here of integers, right? Just to send game keys. So what I'm going to do in this, we have like a few minutes left. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to create another game key thing. So let's just say we call this enum for now. And what we're going to do instead, I'm going to create a game key class. And we're going to try to see, well, actually, yeah, and so this one will also, or maybe no, we don't have to rename this game key. We want to name this game keys and name this back to game key. And what we're going to do here, we're going to have the actual value. So this will be it's not going to be final. It's going to be an int. I also looked up, there are other data types in Dart. You can have an int 8 or something like that. But they are not really, Dart doesn't treat them as int 8s. Dart will still store, as far as I understand, it will still store like a full integer. It cannot actually, it doesn't have a way to represent them under the hood as int 8s. As far as I know, it will still use actually 64 bits for that. But what we can basically do is this. Let me see. I have never used the Dart REPL. Is there a Dart REPL? Let's see. Maybe there's a Dart. Otherwise, we use probably Dart pad. Okay, so there's no Dart REPL. Okay, no, that's not what we want. We want probably the Dart pad. Okay. So let's just remove all this. I'll make a new pad. Okay. Create. And so what we're going to do is we're going to play around in here. So what I want to do with the game keys is I want to say my game key is basically binary. Okay, so we make however many we need. Okay, how do I show binary? Start binary. Is there no such thing? Please don't tell me there's no such thing. You gotta be kidding me. Well, so you know what? We're gonna use node in that case. Yeah, there's no. Wow. Okay, but we'll we can show them as hexes. So it's not a big deal. It's just for demonstration purposes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my key. So this is now JavaScript, but it's very similar to Dart. So this is my key, right? And so basically what I can do is I can say, well, if I want to actually say the up is the last bit, right? So now we're basically on the bit level. So the last bit is my up key, right? So I can set that, and then the key will be, let's say, 1, right? And then what I can also do is I can say, well, the let's say left is on that digit right there, and now my key will have a certain number. But you can see the key is always just one number. But in that one number, I can encode all the keys all the information that I need, which is much smaller, right? So now if I send the keys that are pressed to the server, right, all it has to do is actually send one number instead of like however many keys we support. And then if I want to ask which keys are pressed, I can basically end it. So if I say key, so let's just say I want to see if this third key is pressed, right? So if I say key end 0, so it's 101, right? We can forget about the leading zeros. If I end that, I get it needs to be 0, right? I'm trying to pull out basically this one digit, and then I get 4, and that means basically, and then 4. If we show that to binary, I think there is a way to string, and I think maybe it's binary like this. I keep forgetting. Okay, so yeah, it needs to be radix instead. So we want binary. So we can see we get back the 1001, right? So basically we pulled out that one bit. We kind of dropped this one because right now we're not interested in that. We're interested is this one bit set, right? And so basically we can have, and maybe I'll type this up a little better. And we're actually going to use maybe just our IDE here. I'm going to put a comment here. So let's just say we'll have our, we basically have our keys being left, right, up. So right now we have left, we have right, we have up, and we have fire, right? So then we can basically say left, right, would be, so let's say all keys off is basically 0, 0, 0, 0, right? Now we can say fire on is 0, 0, 0, 1, right? Now we can say left plus fire would be, and let's just move those over here. We can say left is a very, like this, right? And so now if we want to see if is left on, we can basically say that, okay, we have to end it with exactly 1, 0, 0, 0, which will kind of, so basically end in binary means like only if the both bits are 1, then it returns 1, right? And so in this case, since we're ending it with a 0 down here, we kind of, no matter what the fire key is, it will drop that, it will lose that information. But it will basically be able to tell us that, it will basically tell us, okay, you have the left key pressed. So that's that. So basically now what we can do is we can have a method called add a key. So we have a game key, or we can say press or whatever, right? Or we say add, right? Basically we're replacing the set implementation we have with this one. So we have a game key, right? And then basically we'll just switch on the keys. And so this is again, need to go jump back a little bit here. So when we did this, let's just say again let's just say we have a key, and at this point we have left pressed, right? So we have left pressed. So our key happens to be well, it needs to be binary, sorry. So we have left pressed. And now basically if we do our key.toString, should have actually have been keys, but it's fine. So we get that, right? Now, if you also want to press the fire, but we don't want to lose the fact that we press the left button, we will OR it, and we say this, right? And so we say key equals this. Now, if we again look at the binary format, we see now, okay, now both bits are set, right? Because what OR means, like, if either, so if you go back here, let's just say we have the left pressed, and now we OR it with this. That means like if either of those two bits here are set, it will put a 1 there, right? So basically this, yes, it's true because we have at least one, and then here it's also true, and in the other two cases, neither one is set, so they stay 0. So basically when we add a key, all we really have to do is we'll add our basically keys equals keys or the key we're trying to do. Now if the key was already pressed, that will not have a bad effect, because it will just basically right, if it was already pressed, let's say like this, it will still become 1 anyways, right? Because it's ORing. If either one is pressed, it will still keep it. So we don't get any extra keys. I mean, that's what we want, because before we had a set, right? We only want every key to show up once. So now, of course, it's complaining because this is an enum, and it's not really an integer, so we can't really OR it. So we have to figure out how to we have to get the index of it, right? So now we have the index, and so now that's an int. So the index of left should be 0. Now we're going to implement toString, and what we're going to do is, I wonder if you can do to radix string. Okay, that's nice. So we can do this. This should work. And okay, and so we can actually play with this here. We're gonna put a main function, and so we can actually run this code. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a keys, and obviously we're gonna have to initialize that to 0, right? Because we don't have, and we're gonna use hexadecimal just to at least somehow signify that these are bits, right? That this is supposed to be keeping bits and so on. So now what we can do is we'll just print keys as they are, okay? And then we'll say keys.add, and we'll add, let's say, GameKey.left, right? And then we print it again, and then we'll add also fire. All right, and now what we want to do, we want to run this. Okay, so GameKeys, we need a semicolon. And see now the advantage also like of having separated everything out is kind of helping, because we can just run it in Dart now. So now I'm confused why this is not working. Let's see. It stays at 0. So let's put a breakpoint here and figure out what's going on. So we got setting the game key left, and the index is 0. That makes sense, right? And then we set fire, and the index is 3. That's what we wanted. That is weird. So keys is 0 and the index is 3. So let's go back to our. So if we have 0 or 3, it comes out 3, right? So if we have 0 or 3, and then we'll to string it like this, it comes out 1 0, right? Which is basically. Oh, the thing is, okay, so left is actually 0. So we need to make sure that actually we have none or something like that. So let's try that again. Okay, now it makes sense, right? So basically what we had left as being 0. So that still meant no key was pressed. So we have to have at least, we have to start at 1 basically with our keys. So as you can see, at first we had one, we added left, and the it's a little bit confusing. Why is it representing it like this? Well, it's okay. So yeah, we got it backwards, right? We're thinking that left is actually so left is actually 0 0 0 1, and then fire is actually because it goes like it goes 0 1. So actually, what we're going to do is this, just to illustrate this. I know we're running out of time, but I'm going to finish this. So what we're going to do is we're going to annotate this. So we're gonna have 0 0 0 0. We're gonna have at least 4 game keys and more, right? So we have 0 0 0, 8 of those. That's because we might have more game keys in the future. Okay, and so basically, now this doesn't look very nice because it will get moved, it will get formatted. So what we actually do, we put this here, 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 0, okay, like this. Okay, and we put this here. And for now, all we have to change is here. This is none. This is the one here. This will be the one here. And so now we have a problem, right? Because now what would happen actually, this game key would become this and that, right? Because that's that 3, right? If we go and say print 3.to string in binary is 1 1. But we can't do that because now that's not going to work. So what you have to do is we start at 0, and then we have to say what we cannot. Okay, if now this doesn't work, then we're really in a. Then we have to create something different. Can I not? Can I not change the numbers? Okay, so it's missing. So Dart does not allow me to do that. Okay, not cool. This is what we'll have to do exactly. Okay, so there's some features that are not there, but there seems to be always a way around it. So const. So we're gonna do it this way because we need to be able to set the values. Otherwise, as we already showed, this doesn't work. So basically, what we're gonna do is 6 0 1. Right, and then what we have to do, so this would be 2, right? And we're still okay, right? Because basically 2.toString in binary is this, right? So that's fine. But now this one can't be 3, so we have to double it. And you're gonna see it's actually fairly simple. We have to keep doubling. So the next one will actually have to be 8. And it's easier to see in hex because we can just keep doubling like this. Actually, I guess it's be like that. Right? And now if you, for instance, okay, why is this complaining? Oh, it needs to be static. Okay. Now if you're wondering why in college or wherever you were learning all these binary things and you thought you never need those because why we are not working with assembly anymore, well, in these cases you still need to understand this. So the cool thing is here now I can go to 0x10 and then I'll start over. So basically the next one, I'm not going to have one yet, but it could just be 10. So if we do 0x10 to binary, to string in binary, it's basically 1 1. Right, it adds another one here. Versus if we take a decimal 10, that won't work, right? And so 0x10 basically, if we look at it also, and we say what is this in decimal, it's 16, right? So we'd have to keep saying 8 and then 16 and then 32 and all the stuff, but it's actually easier to just keep going like this and say the next one's 2. So we keep having 0 1 2, right? So 1 2 4 8 1 2 4 8. We just keep going like that. That's much easier to understand than doing it in decimal. So basically what we're getting is this. So the 1 will just keep traveling to the left. That's all we want. We never want 2 1s in one of these binaries because each key should only set 1 bit. Right? And again, if you have any questions about this, chat room is open. Let me know. So now, basically the game key now is already actually it's going to be an integer now. So we can just say the key, and so this still works, right? Because now those are ints, and so now this should actually work. So we're getting exactly what we want, right? First of all, we have nothing set. Then we have the rightmost set, which is unfortunately well, I mean, the rightmost is the leftmost, right? This is really a little stupid because it's not filling out. So this 1 is basically the same as saying 0 0 0 1, which is basically this one, right? So we set the left key, so we got that one, right? And then we basically set also the fire, which is basically we also added this bit. So now we got this bit, and that's why we have 1 0 0 1. Okay, so that works. And basically now all we need to do is, in order for our game to work, we just need to say contains, and we'll just give it a key. No, actually an int, right? And so how do we figure out if it contains something? Well, it's very simple. because as I said, we'll just end it, right? So basically, if I have well, let's just say this: if I have like if I want to see if the left is set, right? So let's put that here, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm going to end this, right? I'm going to say end it with the key itself, and end this, and only if both of those are set am I going to get out 1, right? So but what if I'm trying to see if this key is set, right? I'm going to get this back, which means like when I end the key with the keys, I should get back the key, right? So this is a key, these are the keys, and if it was set, I get back the key. So basically what I have to do is return the key, and the keys is the same as the key. Why is it complaining? Oh, we're saying it's void. Okay, fine. Bool, right? So now we can ask this, and actually now this is so small that we're going to make this an expression body, right? So now we have the contains, and as you can see, the add is basically, we can also make it very small. In order to add one, we OR it. In order to figure out if it contains one, we do this. So that's this, and that should be all that's needed. And then all we have to do is in our so this actually returns an int. Right, and so now, those are no longer the pressed keys. So this returns. So this also returns now an int, right? So the pressed keys are now shown. Okay, so this gets a little more complicated, right? So basically, we're going to start with, pressed, and we say it's 0, right? And so we're going to go. And so now, actually, what we're going to do, we're going to go through the pressed ones. It's a logical key of this one, right? And so now we're going to get now then we're going to get the and we're going to end the, and we okay, actually no, but it's easier, right? We already implemented this, so we're going to say the final keys is our game keys. Create a new instance of this, and then every time keys pressed dot map. Well, let's just say this. So we're gonna say final basically the code or the bits, let's just say that, is basically the we're going to say to game key from our this one. So what I don't understand is why it's find. Oh, it needs to be in, right? Okay. So then we get the bits, and then basically what we're going to do is we're going to add, if the bits are null, like that means it was a key that it knows. Then the keys, we add the bits. All right, and so then at the very end we return our keys, which are now game keys, no longer a set because they're already kind of like a set, right? They're already encoding all this information that would normally be in a set, And so now, okay, and now basically here, press keys, we need to just say update, and it just needs to be GameKeys, right? And here we have the same issue, needs to be GameKeys. But the cool thing is, since we have a contains method on it, right, that code doesn't even have to change. Now, basically, when we pass in left, right, we pass in the enum, but we basically, well, it's no longer an enum, it's actually now we kind of changed it under the hood, right, without the rest of our code actually noticing. These are now integer values, but they are constants, so this works perfect. So now we prepared our game keys for sending this information to the server. Now you can see all we have to do is send one number. So this is okay, this still works. Okay, fine. We can remove that main now, but you can see like how nice it is actually to have the code separated to where you can run it actually directly just with Dart instead of having to start up Flutter and all these things. I mean, obviously, if we were really serious about this, we should add tests, right? Whatever I just had there, I should probably add a test, convert it to a test or something. But I'm mainly doing this just for exploration purposes and for fun. So let's see if the keys still work. Yes, our keys still work exactly as before. We did a good job. This is awesome. This is like one of those times where I'm actually not screwing up, where we don't run into issues that we didn't think of. So this means we did what we wanted to do for this episode. I'm going to have to tag this episode, episode 20. Oh, well, first of all, I have to check it in, right? So remove the JS. That was just for exploration. So add everything. And then basically say keyboard encoding keys in single integer int, right? And then we'll tag it episode 20. I think it's 20. Yes, git tag episode 20 end. Okay, and that concludes this episode. I will be back in the afternoon, most likely around 4 p.m. Eastern. So that would be roughly like, right now it's almost 11 here. So that's like 2 p.m. here, right? I'm going to be back 2 p.m. here. So that's roughly in 3 hours, 3 hours and 20 minutes. So make sure to check back in. Down here on the bottom, you should see my Twitter handle. TH Lawrence. Make sure to follow me there if you want to be. I try to tweet whenever I go on Twitch. Obviously, if you follow me here, you should also get a notification. So make sure to tune back in. What we'll do in the next episode, we'll actually just look into building a server for now. We'll basically like not worry about the game at this moment. We'll look at how can we build a gRPC server, and we'll just basically, it will be entirely Dart. There will be no Flutter. We'll build a little client to test things and so on, and obviously a server just to understand how this would work, and then we'll keep adjusting our model. I just knew for sure that making the game key work like this, not only is it actually faster because it's all bit shifts, right? To look if it's contains, we don't have to walk through a set, but also it is smaller, and therefore I knew we need this anyways to be able to send this to the server. And obviously we'd have to look at like how can we do something similar for the gestures. It's a little trickier. We might not be able to do it for the gestures. You might actually have to send a double, but that's something we'll look at later. In about 3 hours and 15 minutes now. We'll actually look just into the gRPC server and how that would communicate with the client. So make sure to join me, and thank you for watching.